I was called to this site because it had lower yields than expected, and also it was cutting out occasionally as if it was an isolation fault issue. The first test I always run is, if possible, to measure the current of all strings whilst generating, and this showed me that there was a blown fuse in the inverter. All the strings tested out okay, and I couldn't find the cause of the isolation fault on the day. However, I'm pretty sure it was down to this smashed panel. This area is getting very hot as well. This module is completely knackered. It's smashed, it's got hot spots, it's got loads of corrosion in it. But it's still actually reading a perfectly sensible value. I would imagine that that would be completely different were it raining. This was a system that was cutting out seemingly at random during the day. It was generating when I arrived, but when I read the inverter error log, it was another isolation fault issue. I tested all the strings individually and quickly found the culprit string, but there were about 20 strings across the entire roof, so how do we work out where that dodgy string is? You can get cable tracers for this application, and this would make things easier, but the method I use is to disconnect the faulty string, turn on the inverter, and trace which cables have no current. I label these and mark the date on so as not to mess up the next person, which could always be you. At this point, I knew where the dodgy string went across the roof, and I could see downpipes from a higher section were channeling water under a particular area. The crossover seemed like a good place to start looking, particularly as I could see dangling cables and a dark mass of something when looking from the side. By this time, the site manager had given me half an hour before I had to leave, so no time for lifting up the entire row. I got lucky, if you can call a huge pile of smelly rotten leaves lucky. This picture was taken after I'd cleared most of them away from the connectors. I found a broken one, replaced it, tested the string, it now had a much more sensible reading, reconnected the string to the inverter, tested every string was generating, because you'd be amazed how many times you see strings that can never have been plugged in, then had 10 minutes to kill, waiting for the site manager to return to let me down from the roof. This is just showing what I think the fault was. This connector was on the roof, underneath the downpipe, and you can see there's a big crack in it there, which it probably shouldn't be.